My name is Jonny Gould, and with me, I'm proud to say, the reason you're all here, is Melanie Phillips, who is a very well-known, prominent British journalist and author from our community. She is best known perhaps for very controversial, thought-provoking columns in the Daily Mail, The Spectator, and the Jewish Chronicle, etc. Awarded the Orwell Prize for Journalism in 1996. She's the author of, amongst other things, All Must-Have Prizes, the relationship between the pupil and teacher being undermined in our education system, and Londonistan, how Britain creates a terror state through the collapse of British self-confidence. A similar theme there indeed. Styled a conservative by her opponents, she prefers to think of herself as defending authentic liberal values against the attempt to destroy Western culture from within. So we've touched on some similar concepts there, Melanie, good evening to you. Let's start with that one. Where, honestly, would you put yourself on the political spectrum? There's nothing left-wing about you, is there?
I hope you can all hear me. Can you all hear me? Is this on? No, it's not.
I think it is on. Do you want to take that one?
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
That's perfect. Right. Where do I place myself on the political spectrum is a question I am constantly asked and constantly evade. Partly because I think that the terms in which we discuss the political spectrum, left,
Sorry, that was me.
and right, I think are now pretty meaningless. And the term right or right-wing is used as a term of abuse to mean anything that's not left. Left being defined as the acme of all things virtuous and good and right and true, and right as defined, therefore, by everything that's not virtuous, not good, and not true. I see myself as being certainly having taken great issue with the left and having departed from their ranks, loosely conceived, because I came to believe that what they stood for was ideology, a variety of ideologies, but as a kind of all-encompassing thing, that they stood for ideology, by which I mean this, that they stand for ideas to which they then wrench the evidence to fit. And I'm just a journalist, and I was trained to look at evidence and then reach a conclusion. Now, people may take issue with my conclusions, that's absolutely fine. But that's the way my mind operates, that's the way I look at the world. Evidence first, conclusions second. Whereas my erstwhile opponents on the left, and this is how I would define the left, it is a position of ideology in which they start with the conclusion, the idea, and then wrench the evidence to fit. And I came to the conclusion that this was inimical to truth. It wasn't simply a question of disagreement, issue by issue. It was a much more fundamental disagreement over looking at the world as it is, and looking at the world as you want it to be, and pretending that it is as you want it to be, when in fact it is not. And so I then went to war against the left, which I do think is a discrete thing which is defined by ideology in this way. But because I went to war against the left, because I departed from them, and because they are Manichaean, by which I mean they think of themselves as being virtue and everything else being beyond the pale, I became instantly beyond the pale. And the way they describe people as being beyond the pale is right-wing. So I started as being, have you gone mad? You sound like the Daily Mail. This was my second column for The Guardian in 1987. And then I became very right-wing, ultra-right-wing, extremely right-wing, off the graph right-wing.
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan, mother of Genghis Khan, and then I became insane. It's quite an easy trajectory once you get started on this life of crime. And then I got into the whole business of writing and speaking about Israel, and then I became something else entirely, so perhaps we'll come to that in due course.
Yes. So you started as a Guardianista on the left wing, and your journey has gone across the political spectrum. Just quickly plot that graph. When were you a left-wing journalist, and how did you, in what year did you start moving to the right? And in fact, have you been basically writing in opposition for the last 13 years? What are you going to do now your lot are in government?
They're not my lot. They are not my lot. I don't have a lot. I never, just to sort of make things even more confusing for those of you who have already lost me completely, I never thought of myself as left-wing. I never thought of myself as any kind of wing. If I thought of myself at all, it was a kind of soggy liberal, which I then thought of as being sort of in the sort of centre somewhere or other. And nevertheless, I found myself, in a kind of, under a kind of overall umbrella of people I assumed were like me, who were liberal, and who call themselves left liberal. So I assumed they were people like me, and we all believed the same things, I thought. We all believed in human progress. We all believed in maximising the good and suppressing the bad in human behaviour. We all believed in looking after the most vulnerable in society and making a better world. That's what I thought we all believed. I still believe those things, and they still believe those things. But I've come to a radically different conclusion about where they're starting from and what side actually they are on. So I was considered to be of the left. I worked at The Guardian from 1977, I think I joined them. And I previously worked for a year on New Society magazine, which some of you may be old enough to remember, which was of a similar kind of mindset. And I worked for The Guardian for Guardian newspapers for the best part of 20 years. But for the first decade or so, I was a reporter, and then I was a social services correspondent, and then I was a leader writer, an editorial writer for a couple of years. And then I became the news editor, which is a management position. I wasn't a writer. And then in 1987, I became a columnist. And that's where the wheels came off the bus with my second column, when overnight I became the devil incarnate with an article about education. And it was, downhill all the way from that point.
So you left?
Well, it took me a very long time to leave, because The Guardian is I haven't been there for a long time, so I can only speak about what it was, but it was a paper which commanded a tremendous amount of loyalty and even love. It was more like a family. And I found it very painful. I mean, it took me a very long time to work out quite how bad the rift between me and them was. Because these were my friends. These are people that I thought were like me, and I was like them. And I thought, they were people that I liked, that I felt comfortable with. And people on the other side of the political spectrum were not my tribe at all. They simply were not, and they still aren't. They still aren't. So when you say your lot are in government, they are absolutely not my lot. They are absolutely not my lot. I don't have a lot.
How do you think your writing will be changed by the fact that it's a coalition government, but it's a Conservative-led government? Let's face it, perhaps in 4 to 5 years, they'll win on their own. No Lib Dems around, they'll have their own majority. How will that shape your writing over the next 5 years? Because surely New Labour, etc., over the last 13 years was a perfect target for you and the sort of opinions that you delivered. It's surely going to fashion the way you write now.
Well, ever since David Cameron became leader of the Conservative Party, I haven't stopped attacking him. There is absolutely no numbers. None. First of all, we say that the Conservatives will, again, rule by themselves. Well, I think that's a very dubious proposition, actually. I think this is a marriage made in hell, and it will endure. I think that Clegg and Cameron are two of a kind. I may be wrong. Maybe the thing will fracture next week. I don't know. The thing is obviously volatile and unstable because there are the Lib Dem rank and file on one hand, there are the Conservative rank and file on the other. both rank and files don't like what their leaders are doing. So it's possible the thing might sort of fissure. But the leaders are, it's a marriage. And I would expect they will do absolutely anything to stay in power, and they will keep each other in power.